everybody. This is, I guess, the live and recorded part of our session. We tend to get together every month as a learning community and spend half an hour together talking about various things that our community has done. And now we're into kind of the masterclass segment where we're going to talk about, some of the really relevant topics for our group of people and hopefully get into some discussion. We've got a small crew today, but we promise to get this out to everybody that's part of our full group. And we've got two amazing authors today. And I got to take this. Here we go. So we're going to go about 20 to 25 minutes on each of our authors, and hopefully it can be interactive. Arupa Tesolin is from Toronto, and she has a book called Ting that she published a couple of years ago, and I found it really interesting. And I thought, plus Daniel Pink was her first kind of recommendation on the back of her book. So anything that Daniel Pink likes, I have to like myself. So Arupa, welcome into our fold.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
We're catching you fresh. People just jump on. We haven't even said hi yet because we had our previous session, but I'm really looking forward to exploring your book today. And Julia Freeland, who I just met recently, we were talking, and it was like amazing that we had so many common links to each other. Seattle beach volleyball players, a love of innovation, and just a really refreshing and candid conversation we had recently that I thought, my Lord, we have to have you as part of our learning community too. So Julia, you've just launched this book, correct? Mm-hmm. I think this is like fresh news, like within the last month, was it?
Yeah. Yep. Just not even a month old yet.
And so I'm so happy we're able to get you. I think you're like 1 hour pre-vacation mode or
I am. I'm completely packed up and ready to go. But this was good. It was great to squeeze this in. Thanks for having me.
Well, amazing. And we've got some members of our learning community here. I know we sent the emails out, and you get so many of the regretted I'm not in the office messages back, but we're recording this and we're going to be sharing it with all of our community.
Yay, video. I love seeing more faces.
And so a number of the people that you're seeing on here, executives that have been through our Futureproofing You program over the last 3 or 4 months, and just super, super interesting people too. So my hope is everybody connects to each other, and we'll make sure that happens. So Arupa, I've got you first in line here. So I don't know if you drew the large straw or the small straw, but you are a Toronto person like me. So I think all these Americans that are online will not understand our pronunciation at all, but yet we'll still communicate effectively somehow. So
yes.
Just in terms of a formal introduction, then we'll get into your segment. You're the CEO of Velocified. I've looked at a number of different things in your world. You self-describe yourself, or maybe others have described yourself as an insight savant, a visionary and innovation alchemist. You're all about unthinking and trying to tap into intelligence and discovering fascinating perspectives about ourselves and possibility. You've got this intuita mindware kind of insight generation process, but you also wrote a book called Ting, which I think is maybe some of the focus of our discussion today, but you're willing to take this discussion wherever you want to take it. Okay. And I was fascinated by it because it not only came with first of all, how many pages is it?
Well, this is actually the book. You have a picture of the older one. Okay. The new book is actually this one. The title is a little bit different. It's Ting, the Surprising Power of Intuition to Transform Work and Innovate. So it's not a big book. It is like 97 pages. Basically, you can read it in an hour, and it's a story. So it's a story, a small novel, but it's also a teaching book because each segment has a lesson that you will implicitly get by reading it, and a lot of depth, but also it's a training book. So you can implement that little insight at the end of each chapter, and you'll notice that your intuition starts to grow, or at least your affinity for it will start to grow. So that's the nature of Ting. So it's a novel, it's a little story, and it's a teaching book, but it's not like one of those corporate teaching books. It actually brings you through the experience of intuition.
I love it, because we've had so many different people that came through our Futureproofing You program. But like from various different straits: engineers, finance people from social innovation spaces. And so intuition is one of these things where it's like, maybe that's the United Nations for us, where it's just like, all right, we all need to get better at it. But I know you had, I don't know if you want to work off of a presentation or if you want to just have a conversation. What's your
I would really, yeah, if you could put up the quotes, the presentation, because I think it just sort of gives us something to focus on while we're talking here. And it's a little bit off the wall too. It's not like a info presentation. It's kind of an insight presentation. So we'll just toggle it from the first slide and as a slide presentation, and I think we're good.
Wonderful.
I'll just give you a little ting. And when you need to move the slides ahead.
I love it. Is that the reason why you named the book that way?
Well, here's the story about let's back it up one. Here, the story about Ting. Ting is actually a made-up word for the sound of intuition when it strikes an open mind. You get this little ting. Might not be a sound, but you get a ting. You get something happens and you get a ting, and it's like, oh, there's something here I need to look at. It's intuitive. So that's why the title is Ting. And it's really a story about the relationship between intuition and authenticity, and how that relationship is important to transforming both ourselves and innovation. And why did I write the book is a really good place to start. Well, the book was keeping me up at night. And I basically had to write down what it was telling me, because I would become like, I would get this feeling that, no, I mean, this needs to go into the book. The book was a rewrite. It was published before, but this new version is has a lot more to it. It's almost like the Celestine prophecy for business. And so I'd wake up and I'd keep writing it, and then is this okay? No, there's more. So I'd go down that rabbit hole and I'd pull out more, and it goes just deeper and further until I sort of realized. So, I mean, the book drew me to write it. So I didn't intentionally sit down and say, I did want to do a book about intuition originally, but I was talking to New York publishers and agents and things like that, and they wanted a Malcolm Gladwell type of journalistic book, which I'm not a meanderer like Gladwell. I'm kind of an insight, like narrow down that focus, connect the hidden dots. I'm a strategist, and I've got a long business background in learning and management and innovation as well. So, I mean, I nail down things, and I like to connect the dots, even though they're hidden dots. And I think no one else could have written this book in the world other than me. And sometimes we just get called by our own authenticity to follow through. And Ting is the result of me following through on authenticity. So Ting, I'm gonna ting you. All right. So this presentation is full of quotes from the book. Like this one, the trajectory of authenticity has intuition as its wings. And it's really, when we follow our own authenticity, it comes from that inner zone of who we are, who we're becoming, and who we want to be, and all of that stuff. And it's really, really important. And I think in business, we have this unfortunate, and organizations too, this unfortunate things of trying to squish everything into linearity. And it exhausts us. And when we shift from that linearity, we literally turn ourselves inside out. We work from intuition, things get easier, because everything is not non-linear. There is an implicit knowledge that we have. There's the explicit world, but there's deep internet connectivity between what's implicit and what's going on outside, and those connect. You never create anything from the explicit world. Everything was always created from the intuitive self, from the imagination, and intuition and imagination have a real deep connection too. So, ting. This is a brilliant idea.
I'm on to it. I'm on to it. It's more my technology that's slow, not me.
So here's another quote, and we like to talk about the way things are and what's true about this and what's true about that. But when we do go inside our intuition and authenticity, we will find that we're aligned with what that truth is on a day-to-day basis, and that authenticity will stay consistent. The language will shift, the awareness will shift, but if you stay on that beam, you're going to get a lot of good things happening. And whether that's with yourself on a transformational level or yourself with an organization. So let's ting. And I put this quote in there to be a little bit provocative, because I know it's a word that large organizations, maybe Silicon Valley, is a little more open, and some businesses are a little more open about this whole notion of clairvoyance. And as I state in the book, it really is about seeing what is real, what is true, what is, separating the signal from the noise. To me, that's what clairvoyance is. Now, typically we connote that word with somebody who can draw down on those implicit knowledge and insights on a different, maybe an extended playing field, but it really is about getting clear. So getting clear and focused. So intuition will help doing that. Ting. And when you get really good at listening to intuition, you then have access to a sense, an apprehension that surpasses everything you think you understand. And that is where our power is, to start drawing from there, because that's where you get a lot of creative energy, not just ideas. You get the creative energy to enact and work on those ideas. You get the inspiration to power through on those ideas. So we're now connecting ourselves to a larger sense than our five senses. And it sort of manifests through our five senses, but it's a bigger overall deal, and it's a quiet sense. So we have to kind of train ourselves to get good at it, because it's like kind of like opening up a well, and the first water that comes out is a little bit dirty. You have to keep pumping it a little bit to make it clearer, and get more resonant yourself with it, to recognize what the signals are. And once you are able to recognize those inner cues and discern what's a real intuition, what's not a real intuition, then you have the power of movement. Ting. Now, there's a couple of quotes here about organizations. And when an organization opens to intuition, it encourages people to be authentic. And I think that's really important right now, because we're living in the land of recognizing inclusiveness on a much wider paradigm. But it's a much wider paradigm than gender and culture and race and everything else. It's including thinking style, nervous systems, cognitive styles, and all of these things. It's really, we're a nation of individuals, and intuition, when we're open to it, it helps us be more open to individuals. Ting. And innovation, a lot of companies work really hard to innovate, and they do it kind of as an out-breath. It's always working, working, working. But you have to take that inhaled breath for the lungs to be strong enough to let that out breath, which is your innovation products. You don't have that inner reflection phase. You don't have the strength to go forward, because people need that. They need to sort of cleanse their creative palette. They need to have that rest time, and then to go forward with innovation. And this is an area of balance. In innovation, we are really good with explicit. We're terrible with implicit. This is, to me, where innovation has to go forward. We have to be more whole. Ting. And this is really important, that more than a career, people want a life they can be fully present in. So taking that notion, it's the fully present person that you really want in your organization. Ting. And this is sort of the reality shift of Ting from a transformational basis, that I threw a brick through the window of my life and woke up from my work coma. And you start thinking of how often do I go to work and I'm not fully present. I'm kind of I put on the mask, not the COVID mask, but I put on the professional mask, and I limit myself from being all the things that I am. And it's important to start waking up and being present to what that looks like and how it prevents us from actually actuating on a personal level and on an organizational level. Ting. And here is probably what I think as a kind of a creative scientist, one of the most impactful realizations in the book is that when you're authentic and you're intuitive, you enter into a flow state. And when you're in flow, and only when you're in flow can you create. And that's novel creation. Ting. And I put it into a mathematical equation here that authenticity plus intuition equals flow, and flow creates. And that is a really significant thing. So I encourage you to take a look at Ting and experience it, because it really is a book that you need to experience. People have told me interesting things have happened to them while they were reading, and I always love to hear what that's like, because of the transformations that they go through and the realizations that they go through. I mean, I don't know that I'm the best creative writer. I have a daughter that's a much better writer than I am, but I'm really good at getting insight and plucking wisdom and creating aphorism. The book is full of these quotes that some will really resonate with you, and on different days they'll really strike you with hey, there's something I have to look at in there. So I'm hoping that that's what you get from that. So I'm open to all of your questions. I know you have them, and fire away.
Well, I'll let my audience here simmer with it, and hopefully we'll get a few questions for you. Just one quickie though. It's funny because you authored this pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Or at least the nuggets of it was pre-pandemic, and all of a sudden pandemic comes along. It strikes me that the context that we're living in is so ready-made for your book, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's an interesting time. Yep.
I think that
because
brick
we've all gone inside a lot more, and we're starting to rethink a lot of things about the way we are, the way we want to live, the way we want to present. All of these things become really critically important.
Andrea, did you want to ask a question? I saw your hand is raised.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So, you said you encourage us to read and see what resonates with us. On the first pass, every single quote resonated with me. I actually took snapshots of the screen. And I'm one of those people that goes and digs. I'm gonna read them again and again and so on. But what really, the one that resonated the most, I'm looking at my phone to read it. When an organization opens to intuition, it encourages people to be authentic. That together with the inclusion that you mentioned, I have never heard this before, but I have felt it for 25 years of career. Oh. And I am one that embraces intuition. I just love the power of my intuition, and I listen to other people's intuition, but I have never found a home like this. So how do you find a home like this, right? How do you find an organization that embraces this, right? That where you can feel you can be your best.
You can be in both. In the organization that you're now in, if you want to show up fully, things will change like crazy. If you feel it's time, you feel it's time for a change, then also be more yourself and
in my case, I did and I left. But now when I'm on the outside, and where do I, how do I evaluate organizations for this, right? Maybe it's a rhetorical question. Maybe I just need to think about it. But
more than thinking, Andrea. It's more than thinking. And you nailed it. You nailed it earlier, and I'm just listening to and resonating with your words. I have always felt this, but I've never heard this. And intuition always starts with a felt sense. It's a felt sense, not an emotional sense, because I've taught people. I put myself into a test position when I was going through a child custody crisis, and it was emotional for me. It would be emotional for anybody. And I used my intuitive mindware during that situation. And I got an answer from Insight directly, no matter that I was in a distressed state. So intuition sort of penetrates this when you get it right, and you're able to really hone in and connect. It's kind of heart-based sense of feeling. If you're still stuck in your head, you're not really there. It's a whole sense. You have access to your mind and your thinking faculties, but the presence location of it is not there.
Okay.
And that's where you need to live. And if you live in that, things are going to happen all over. And a big insight that I got recently is it doesn't matter what you do while you're here. What matters is the level, the energy state that you're in while you're doing it. And if you're in a great energy state, things are going to happen. I used to go to work. I used to work for government, and people would, when I was absent from my office, they would come to my office, look at my pictures, the pictures of my kids, and not in a creepy way. And they would just kind of hang out there because they said it felt good. And then when they felt peaceful, they would leave. And they'd come and tell me this. And these were like engineers from all over the world, and managers and other really, accomplished professionals. And people can feel who you are.
I like people coming to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I like people coming to offices to look at your pictures, not to steal my food. That's what people used to come to my office for. So,
do they still have Hershey's Kisses? Because that was always my, the go-to. I would leave little Hershey's Kisses on my desk, and all the little mice would come. Yeah, Yap, were you about to ask a question?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite admins at FM Global, which one of the sad things about COVID, her office was just like a candy store. It was just like, and I would always go in there, and the Hershey's, whatever. So it's probably not very good for my diet, but I would spend a lot of time there. I have a question about the book about letting intuition lead. In a sense, we spoke earlier about Daniel Kahneman. There's a lot of popular literature lately about intuition sending you astray, right? So I'm gonna ask you a little bit harder question. There's this Robert Cialdini about persuasion, how people can use the intuition that you think you have and how it's being used to kind of sell you stuff you may not need. And Daniel Kahneman, you got the system 1 and 2 thinking, system 1 being more the intuitive way, and how often your brain is kind of shortcutting and making the wrong decision. So how does that kind of literature on behavioral science and map onto your experience when you wrote the book, just out of curiosity?
Well, I mean, you're right. That is a cognitive model. And our cognitive model is to be brain first. Our potential creative model is to be integrated first. And I think that's the kind of shift that we're going in. And if we're all, I mean, my clientele, the companies and people that I work with, they're all educated professionals. So we all have the same thought culture mindset, which we're all thinkers. We're working in that realm, and learning how to experience your intuition and working with it and knowing when it's clear is an experienced sense. It's a skill that you have to master yourself. And then you can't really be swayed, because when you know, and you can feel things out for yourself. But it is really important. You don't get there from the cognitive. From the thinking part of the cognitive. You get there and then you summon the cognitive. it's a very different space. And that's what we have to learn. What is intuition? How am I recognizing those subtle cues? What are those things telling me? Are they real? Am I getting it clearly? Because if I get it clearly, then I can act on it, and then I can assess, well, what happened. And there is a big, you know, I have been reading Anti-Fragile from Nassim Taleb, and he articulates something really, really nice, that in management and proactiveness and things like that, you can never sell to anybody that you saved something, or you averted a disaster. You can't sell it because it didn't happen. You can't even measure that. In the field of intuition, your proactivity kind of lives in that space all the time. The results happen when you have a novel innovation, and then you create something that's new and different and valuable, and then people can put a value on it. But it is a value shift, and we can't possibly measure all of those benefits that accrue from averting disaster. Only when we have a disaster as big as the one that we're living in now do we realize what it cost. It would have been a lot easier to avert it, right?
Right. Sure.
Yeah. The irony is you're having an exchange here, and YAP exists and functions in the insurance game. So it's in some respects they do put a value on averting disaster. But the more I hear about your talk here, Arupa, it dawns on me that, you know, and I think John Cleese just had a funny thing to say about it. I can't remember his exact quote, but you almost have to be smart enough to be intuitive, don't you? Like you almost there's a reason why we're living in this crazy world right now, where there's 20% of people don't want to get vaccinated, and 20% of the people over here hate those people for not wanting to be vaccinated. Like there's a differential in intuition right now, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, intuition is kind of a homing device for us. And you can't, if you are really clear and one with your intuitive space, you can't be so diverted or corrupted or controlled or manipulated or politicized, because you will have a wider perspective on a lot of things. But this divide and conquer mentality that is the world we live in is driving us crazy. So if we don't, I mean, the problem with not being intuitive is we don't have to worry about the next millennium. If we continue this way, we're not going to be around. We have to shift, because we have to wake up. We have to shift our cognitive basis. We have to shift our awareness, our consciousness. So we have to do things differently. And fortunately, or unfortunately, maybe we're in the time now where the now precedent of this disaster has created a shift in terms of our awareness of how needful we are that way.
Well, we're about to get into the second half. I'm going to transition it over to Andrea just right now, but before you get away from us, Arupa, what's the best way that both our live audience and recorded audience can get in touch with you?
At intuita.com, intuita.com. And Ting is available on Amazon, and Intuita Mindware, which is what I'd say is the next step after Ting, is to actively cultivate your intuition. That's there on Intuita as well.
Wonderful.
Or Andrea? On Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I have a big mouth.
We're all on Twitter, but conversations go to die on Twitter sometimes, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Andrea?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, Arupa. That was like really interesting and challenging, right? I don't think I personally kind of challenge myself on the front that you've kind of talked about today. So it's I will now, and I'll definitely grab the book as well. So this is part two. We love having a multiplicity of different people coming in, and Julia was a real find for me. She's based out of Seattle. She's author and a coach and an evolutionary change strategist. I looked at your LinkedIn history, Julia, and it's an extensive list of different professional hairnets. There's like litigation consultant. There's a lot of interesting titles, which I view as a good thing. I think you're probably a polymath in the space of change and innovation. And I know your material is going to be different than Arupa, but maybe the commonality is kind of, looking at yourself and looking at through the lens of others to get to hopefully breakthrough change. You've written this book called Take Your Shoes Off First. It's a story about a simple idea with the power to change everything. And I know in our first conversation, I found your level of candor, and I can't remember what you said in our conversation, but something about, you know what, I'm all about just experimenting this year, or something along those lines, which I think we all are now. So welcome. And yeah, take us to your leader.
Thanks. Yes, I call myself a builder, a creator, and a someone who believes wholeheartedly in the capacity of humans to evolve and change constantly. So I'm always been in awe at the idea of what humans are capable of. I'm so sad that everybody turned off their cameras. Like, I want you guys interacting and engaging. And like, thank you for still being there, Andrea. I appreciate it. So I'm a facilitator at heart. Thank you for coming back. I'm a facilitator at heart. So I'm not somebody who is much about giving presentations. I like doing it, but and I have a new one. Yay. Hello. Is it Tabitha? I need my glasses.
Yeah, this is Tabitha. I'm here.
Thank you for joining us.
I just turned my camera off because we're recording, and I just have it on speaker view. That's the reason I did it.
Oh, no problem.
I can stay on. I'll stay on.
Thank you. Thank you. I love seeing faces. We don't see them enough. So I first wanted to just get a little bit information about you guys, because I'd like to be able to talk to what's curious and interesting to you. We can kind of talk all over the board, but would one of you do me a favor and just give me a little synopsis of like what's important to this particular group?
Andrew, you want to serve it up?
Oh, I was hoping somebody else would jump forward, but did you mean me or Andrea? I'll do a little bit, but I'll quickly turn the baton over. I'll say what is a common denominator. So these are all people that have been together to think about having agency over the future, to be proactive and bold with regards to an early stage initiative. They're all in business. There's NGO and nonprofit as well, but we're finding that those worlds are blended. And so the thought is to do three things this group has in common: how to be an initiator of a leadership initiative, or a corporate initiative, or an organizational initiative that requires people to be bought in a new way. So that's number one. Number two is seeing early signs of change in different ways. So maybe an anomaly in data, or some new, like COVID, like some new reality that's come in front of us, and we feel like we can't keep our eyes closed. And number three is pretty much a very strong organizational sense that there should be a process that is different from what we were taught. So open-mindedness around models and processes and systems. And that's what we spent 90 days working through. Does that help?
Yes.
And anybody want to add something? Yap, I know you always want to add something. I would love it if you would add something to that.
Reputation, I guess. Hi, Julia. Pleasure to meet you. I'm part of a large commercial property insurance company. I'm part of the innovation team. So it made sense for us to take part of the Futureproofing U course, because that's what we do. It's kind of what's happening in the future, not just tomorrow, but also the day after tomorrow, right? And how do we position ourselves to work on that? And it's, if you work on very complicated things, it's hard to have a small group of innovators move big things forward for the organization. So how can you have, so one thing that I got out of the class, and I think that we're still trying to figure out at some level, is how do you get small ideas to grow from a small group, and how do you get the attention, and how do you position the company to work on certain things that you see coming, on the horizon, perhaps slightly past the horizon. So yeah, it's been a good class. It's been and the one thing that was cathartic was that we were in a group of people that were all struggling in some way that felt familiar. So if nothing else, it was good to among peers from all kinds of industries that we're struggling getting ideas off the ground.
So it's struggling with, not with coming up with ideas, but struggling. Do I have really low?
No, you
bandwidth?
sound great.
Nice and good.
Yeah.
So is it struggling with coming up with ideas, or is it struggling with getting those ideas into execution? Is that where we are?
I'd say it's the second mostly.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's lots of ideas, but these are people who are trying to, we call it see, learn, decide, commit. So we see things, we have to learn a lot, and then we have to make decisions. But the real piece of it is commitment within themselves and within the organizations.
Gotcha. And is it a lot of you guys being in charge of getting those decisions and those ideas implemented out? Is that where you guys all are?
Yeah, I'm one stage before that, because we're proving the concept, we're making a business case for something, but then the idea is to hand it off to our core business groups to implement it. So I'm not responsible for full scale out, but so that transition piece, that's a critical piece. So you prove the value, convincing the organization to work on, and then you kind of get the flywheel going a little bit, and hopefully have some group take it on and scale it.
Okay, awesome. Does anybody else want to add in? Tabitha, Motion, Rajiv, Andrea?
I think for me, I'll say it's basically just changing the paradigm shift of what people are thinking and using the local solutions kind of like to solve local problems.
Okay.
That's my understanding, my thinking.
Anybody else?
Yeah, it's Andrea here, Julia. So I actually cheated a bit and looked at your LinkedIn profile early on because this breakthrough compass intrigued me. So, and I saw something in your learning profile that I can connect to the Futureproofing You class we took and to our group, right? Because that's what we're talking about. You talked there about this isn't just about learning a new skill, it's about changing how we think about learning, working, and connecting. And I think that was, for me, that was a learning from the course. The idea of how we think about learning and how we think about unlearning certain things as well. Yeah. So that's
I love the forensics that you always do, Andrea. It's like, all right, I know that if something's percolating in her mind, she's going to go three levels down and then come back up and surface with something interesting. So
yeah, if you see my head going down, I'm not tuning out.
No worries. I got two different screens, so it's like moving around.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that context, everybody. I have been passionate about change for most of my life. And as Sean noticed, I have reinvented my career, not just my job, but my career several times. I think I did it like 6 times by the time I was 34 years old. So the reinvention is a part of my very nature. I do it with clothing and painting and furniture and my jobs and, just you name it, I'm in it. So my passion for what I've been doing specifically and the development of the Breakthrough Compass came from my journey through 3 very life-altering experiences that completely wiped away my sense of identity and asked me to completely become a new version of myself. So Arupa, I want to thank you first before I dive into this too much. Thank you for sharing your perspective. And I think it's fascinating. One of the things about the book that I wrote is that it's a parable what I've noticed is that there are very, very few. In fact, I've challenged business or bookstore owners and people that work in bookstores and many of my friends. Can you come up with one woman author of a business parable? I'll lay that out for all of you guys. People have gone on to Google, they cannot find it. So Arupa, perhaps yours falls in that category. I don't know. It sounds like perhaps a little bit, but mine's definitely a business parable and it's also very short. The goal of the book is really to create an initial introduction to the framework of the Breakthrough Compass, but most people will read the book and never know that the Breakthrough Compass is underneath it. So it's much more just a story that resonates deeply with everybody who reads it, because it's founded on human nature. And that's what the compass is about. The compass is about helping people, teach people, how does your body, perhaps we'll go with what Arupa was saying, is like, follow its intuition, its natural instincts to want to evolve to the next version of who you are. And this also works for organizations. Because organizations are made up of humans. So if we are not aligning our efforts along with what human nature naturally wants to do, we can get really stuck behind and end up costing just our organizations and ourselves lots of time and effort and energy as we battle a bunch of different defenses, these natural defenses that we have to try to preserve and protect who we are. And so for just kind of to my back up a little bit, like where my kind of passion with all of this came from, what I should say in 2016, I had my third in a decade life-altering experience. And it happened to be getting fired from my dream job. I had just finished 6 months prior, I had just finished getting the highest accolades of my career. I had just designed a leadership development program for Sony Pictures Entertainment, and one of their four presidents, executive presidents, was in the room with it. And he walked up to me afterwards and he said, hands down, that is the best leadership program I have ever been a part of. 6 months later, actually I should say 3 months later, I was demoted, and 6 months later, I was fired. So I was in a situation of wondering what in the heck just happened. My company was going through a lot of overhauling, because what they were trying to do is try to change their products, change the way they delivered our services. So we were a learning and development company. They were trying to overhaul those in a way to align with what future needs were and with what kind of the way the future was going, which with a much more just-in-time delivery system. But they wanted to alter the way we built all of that too. Without me understanding or knowing it, I was fighting that change, but I was completely blind to what I was doing. And for me, I think this speaks, or what the epiphany I had right around the time I was getting fired, a little bit afterwards, was that we can get so caught up in and blinded by our own beliefs, our own certainty, our own ideas, that we are the expert, that we're the ones that know what we're doing, that, look at my past success. You hear this all the time with organizations. Look at the past success. Look how amazing I've been. So why in the world are you going to come to me and say that I have to completely transform the way I do things? And so I, not knowing it, I actually thought I was doing the right thing. And I started battling this change, doing it all. If you had asked me at the time, I would have told you it was me trying to protect the company and trying to protect my CEO. So what happened is in the kind of my epiphany that happened, because I'm sitting there going like, how the hell, like what the heck is going on? Like, why am I suddenly not valuable to this company? My epiphany was that because I was like, it's not change. Like, I love change. Like I said, I have a long history of it. You can see it on my LinkedIn. But what was really happening? And what was really happening was that I had this epiphany that the kind of change we are facing today, it's not the kind of change that any of us have really had a lot of experience with. In fact, the kind of change that we're facing today is the kind that completely pulls the rug out from underneath us, challenges our sense of who we are, challenges our sense of how we engage with others and what's our relationship with others, and how we operate in the world. That kind of change, transformational change, is something that many of us are unprepared for. So when I had this kind of epiphany, I was like, okay, I think I get what's going on. So I'm going to put a little question out to all of you guys and say, what do you feel is the number one biggest challenge to people, to all of us, in being able to thrive in the future?
Anybody want to take that one? There should be Jeopardy music here.
I know, I do have some music. I do usually play music when I facilitate my workshops. If you'd like me to, I can talk.
It's the power of introverts. It has to take a while to simmer inside someone's head before.
I'm a big fan of that. Yeah.
Repeat the question one more time.
You don't have to say the primary if you want. Just say, like, start naming, like, what do you think are some of the big challenges that are in front of us, excuse me, as individuals, to ensure that we are relevant and capable of thriving in this rapidly changing world that we're building.
Well, I'll get us started. I think just getting stuck, you had mentioned your identity and kind of previous knowledge that you may become prisoner to, right? Like, I am this type of person, or I understand agile innovation very well. So everything you're looking at comes into looking at it through that lens. So I think that might be one thing, because when you get your rug pulled out from underneath you, it doesn't matter how good you can stand, you're going to have to probably crawl for a while before you get back up.
Another camera, yay. Hello.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think one thing that's an eye opener to me is that everybody goes with the intelligence quotient, but if you actually look through the history, people that have a very high IQ are not necessarily the successful people. There is a new concept, and that is adaptability quotient. People that can adapt are the ones that become successful, and I think that is a challenge to be adaptable.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that wants to, like, throw in?
I think Andrea.
Yeah, so a challenge, right, about related to the future. Yeah, so one thing I think for the workplace is how we hire, how people get hired, the mindset for hiring, that I think it's quite stagnant.
Tell me more about that. Like, what is it that we tend to hire for right now?
Well, so we hire for, experience in a specific way. Like, we need to hire a person. We're going to want to, we have a role where you're going to, the person is going to interface with Google. So we're going to hire for somebody who has, let's just say, some relationships at Google. And that's the criteria, instead of looking in a wholesome way of, what capabilities are required into the future. Because you can meet people, you can build relationships, but there are a whole lot of other capabilities that are required. So this is just one example. And, we hire people like ourselves. We hire like we were hired in the past. And that's, I think it's a huge challenge.
I have one quick one too. I've been really noticing how much I prefer to be in control and feel like I have a roadmap. And what's happening lately is that when you have a roadmap, by definition, it was, the last war fought roadmap. And so I think that it's interesting, the more we talk about disruption or whatever it is that's happening, or this adaptability quotient that Mohsen talked about, the people in power are probably pretty uncomfortable with it by definition.
Yeah, lots of disruption. So those are all great. And I love that you guys went there. I can tell you're a group that's focused on change. because a lot of people, when you first ask them, like, well, what are the biggest challenges? And if you look at media and you look at all these efforts that are being done to help upskill people, the focus is always on their skill sets. And just what Andrea is saying, the focus is like, you know, what is the experience you're bringing to the table? Do you have specific technical skills that go along with this? But what Mohsen is saying and what Andrea is saying, it's like the idea is that we actually need to be hiring and thinking more about how do we develop people's capacity to be better at adapting, to be better at letting go, to be better at being curious about what else is possible, so that we're not constantly looking at what was the best practices of what we've always done, to be better at being okay with not being right, be better at being okay with being more comfortable with being in this really interesting dynamic, and to what Arupa was saying, like following our intuition, getting that sense that actually what we've always done is it's not working. Like let's just follow it from that very simple context. It's like, are we ramming up against a wall constantly? If we're ramming up against a wall constantly, that's probably a really good message that we need to figure out a way to get around it. That the way that we're going about it is not the right way that we need to be going about it today. So when I work with my clients, I'm constantly saying, please pay attention to where you're getting angry. Every single time you get angry, every single time you get frustrated, ask yourself, instead of being mad about it, get curious about it. Ask yourself why you're getting mad. And so when, for me, I'll just, I know we are short on time and I could talk about the Breakthrough Compass forever, but that's a whole nother thing. There's leadership programs designed around it. But I've been doing all this work to try to help people understand what I discovered, which was that, as I was going through these 3 big, huge life-changing events, I noticed by the time I got to the 3rd one where I was getting fired, I seemed to be getting through them faster. Like I was rising from that adversity, rising from that challenge faster. And I also noticed that I happened to be traveling in the same path. And I wondered, is that path something that's unique to just me, or is this common to all humans? And it turned out, as I started interviewing and talking to people, that this path is common to all humans. Yes, it manifests and looks different. But I think what we need to do, just like with the teenagers who are getting so much better than anybody who's over 40, at being able to like look on their phone and I don't know if you guys have ever seen a teenager, like how fast they can consume information. And it's because they're getting more of an essence of things. They're getting a feeling. They aren't completely processing every little bit. Because there's so much information out there, people are getting better. The people who have grown up in this age are getting better at kind of looking at the essence of experiences. And I feel like that's what we need to do, is get back to the essence of humankind and realize that if we really think about what humans are really designed to do, we're designed to evolve. We're born, just the one thing we can do when we are born that we're really good at. We don't see well, we don't smell well, we don't eat well. One thing we do really well is we change. Our bodies are designed to change. And yet we've been living in a world that has been so much about certainty, stability, getting things right, the one track that we're supposed to stay on for all of our lives, that our capacity to adapt has withered. Our capabilities, our natural given capabilities, our gifts as humankind, as humans, have completely withered and gotten rigid. And in order to be able to adapt to the kind of transformative change that we are being asked to deal with today in this world we're building, where I believe we should be focusing on is on rebuilding those traits, that what I call origin traits, or breakthrough origin traits, our capabilities to evolve into the next version of ourselves. And the book, what I wrote, I've been working for years on the book, on the Breakthrough Compass. But it was too complex. It was too much. You can see even now, like there's a lot that I can talk about with this. So what I wanted to do is what I ended up doing, because I was running up against a wall. And I was like, the world's not ready for this quite yet. They can do trainings on it and stuff like that. But like the first thing, because I really want to get out to everybody, is I want people to understand this idea that maybe they're seeing the world in black and white when really there's a rainbow of possibilities. And so the book I wrote was something that was meant to resonate with anybody who reads it. And so far it is. It's supposed to be easily consumable. You can read it in less than an hour, much like Arupa's. And then there's a lessons and a framework out afterwards that you can use to be able to help yourself rethink about the experiences, those frustrating places that you're in, the conflict that you're in, the problems that you're facing, and help yourself get out of that rutted thinking and really become much more open to be curious and make room for change. So that's what it's about, really.
We'll invite one or two questions, but before we do, we are pressed for time at the end here, Julia, unfortunately, but where's the best place that anybody here or listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, can get in touch with you?
And by the way, don't be shy to type it in. You should type it in the chat as well. Yeah, but you say it out loud because it's a recording, obviously.
Sure. So LinkedIn is always the best. Julia Clays Freeland, that is hands down the best place to get me. RevolveU.com is my website. Take Your Shoes Off First is the name of the book, and takeyourshoesofffirst.com will also get you to my website. And it's on Amazon and bookstores, and the reviews are blowing me away, truly.
That's always good validation. As speaking author to author, it's always good when you launch it to the world and you get that type of good initial feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know you and Arupa have taken this from two different perspectives, but it's interesting. Like we spent a lot of time on our course talking about how do we get our companies, maybe even how to get our teams to change. But you know, we spent a bit of time, just a sliver of time, about how do we get ourselves to change. And I think that's maybe a commonality of both of your structures, that there's a lot of self-awareness and introspection, which I know a number of our friends and colleagues have said like that is a key linchpin to getting really good innovation done.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the biggest pieces, is that where I believe this all is really helpful, and the book is actually super helpful, is for teams to use it. The idea is that we need to prepare people for change. We need to help people make room for that change. You can't just, we have a world that is one where we're saying, be resilient, which that's a whole nother topic we could talk about, why I don't think that is the right message that we should be sending out to anybody. We should be sending out the message more that we need to engage in change, and that we need to embrace this opportunity of all this disruption as an amazing time for us to have a new slate to start from. And but if you do not prepare your people to be successful by helping them make room for change, which the book helps with and the framework helps with, you've got to learn how to align all of your efforts as an organization and as a group to helping your people, like align them with human nature's desire to change. Otherwise, you're going to run into all kinds of defenses. And I'm happy to talk more about that with